The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black Today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbransen and Matt Gutierrez.
Good morning, Las Vegas. 15 days, Raider Nation. Welcome back to Las Vegas's only Raiders-only talk show, where we're back here in the Dollar Loan Center, don'tbebroke.com studios for another week of Raiders football talk on Silver and Black Today. I'm Scott Gulbransen, your host, and I'm joined by my co-host, Matt Gutierrez. Matt, good morning.
What's going on, man?
Oh, man, just a little bit. I got a little bit cold, so I got a little frog in the throat. Yeah, it's hello.
Yeah, it sounds
there.
familiar.
I know. So,
man, I tell you what, I'm sure like me, everybody else in this room, you drive by the stadium site a lot.
Oh, crazy.
Man, it's coming out of the ground. It's close to 100 feet in the air already now, and you can see where the opening's going to be on that
north side.
That northeast almost kind of end zone.
Right.
That's going to look out onto the strip. Dude, that thing, I get chills every time I drive by. I can't believe it's real. You see the Raider emblems out there and everything. As connected as we are to this thing, it's still surreal. It is surreal
that we continue to see that. But I'll tell you what, it's going to be here faster than any of us think, which is going to be kind of crazy. But we'll continue to roll with that. And but again, I want to remind you guys, each week we're here to talk Raiders football, but we want you to be the third host, or actually the fourth host today. We have David Stepanian in, who I'll introduce in a little while. How did the Raiders look overall to you on Friday night? And we'll also look at what's coming up with the quarterback situation. I mean, we don't know. It's pretty bad.
I'm glad you said quarterback and not quarterbacks, because it's pretty singular at this point.
It is pretty singular, and we'll talk about that. Also, will Donald Penn cut it at right tackle? We actually have a poll up on our Twitter handle. You can check that out. We'll talk about those results a little bit later. Tell us what you think. Call now, 702-889-5978, and tell us what you think. Don't be a sluggard. I try to introduce new words every week. A sluggard, look it up, dictionary.com. Call us at 702-889-5978. A reminder, we are streaming today's show on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope. So make sure if you want to watch us, you can do that. You can also interact with us on Twitter, our individual handles, which are easy to find. Also, Silver Black, the number 2 day, Silver Black Today on Twitter. We'll take your questions and more. So let's look at today's show. The first hour of the show, we're going to focus on the game that was. We're going to deep dive and see what we learned from the 13-6 win over the Packers. Lots to talk about there, and still many, many questions on how Reggie McKenzie and John Gruden are going to shape this roster. At the bottom of the hour, our own senior NFL analyst, the coach, Chris Reed, will join us to give us his breakdown of Donald Penn's move to right tackle, which is a big piece of conversation, Matt, in Raider Nation.
Yeah, the offensive line, which was so good for a couple of seasons, is still fantastic in the middle with those three guys. But bringing in Colton Miller and insisting on starting him at the left tackle spot, which I think, the Penn injury early on had a lot to do with that, because he wasn't there. He wasn't on the practice field. But having him start at that left spot almost gives you a little bit of freedom to be able to move Donald Penn to that right side.
Correct.
As long as he can do the job.
Well, and they've both struggled. And we'll talk a little bit about that and about the game and get everybody's opinion. It's very, again, as in everything with Raider Nation is polarizing, and that is no different. So we'll talk to Chris about then. In the second hour at 9:15, we'll reach out on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line and talk to Seahawks sideline reporter for Root Sports Northwest and KIRO Radio, Jen Mueller. She'll fill us in on this year's Seattle team, including how former Raiders great Seabass Sebastian Janikowski is doing in his new home, as well as their new defensive coordinator, Ken Norton Jr. You remember that name?
Still kicking bombs, man.
Still kicking bombs, yeah, big one. And what Raiders fans can expect this week, and also in October when the two teams meet at Wembley Stadium in London. Also in the second hour, the Silver and Black Today's quarterback, Matt Gutierrez, will again lead his Audible segment. Matt picks a wildcard subject each week at his discretion, and we'll discuss and get your views on the subject. So pick up the phone in the second hour to get in on the dog pile. Matt, we got a preview on what your Audible's on today?
I'll tell you it starts with Obi Melifonwu.
Ah, the former. Well, I guess he's still technically a Raider.
You'll never see him on the field again.
No, he cleared waivers, and they're going to pay him $2.5 million.
You've seen him on the field up to this point.
But we'll close out the show and look ahead ourselves at the Seahawks game and talk about 3 things we need to see in that last preseason game in Oakland. Now, I want to take this time real quickly. We got a nice letter. We get a lot of interactions with folks from Raider Nation when it comes to the show and the podcast. I
thought you were going to say hate mail for a minute.
We get that too occasionally, but that's all that's going on. So we're gonna talk about a letter we received because I really like this one, and this is from Eric in the Bay Area. We're withholding his last name just to give him some privacy. But here's what he said. He said, "Dear Scott and the rest of the crew at Silver and Black today, I'm a lifelong Raider fan, and I'm an avid listener of your podcast and show. I grew up with the Raiders as my home team in L.A. in the 80s and 90s. David Stepanian, right? Same as you. Oh, yeah. And then I went on to spend most of my adult life on the East Coast, but as of 2016, live in the Bay Area. Of course, I'm disappointed the Raiders are moving to Las Vegas. However, because my fandom began while the Raiders were displaced in L.A., and then because I bounced around the U.S. before settling in the Bay Area in 2016, I've long been accustomed to supporting the Raiders from a distance, so notwithstanding the pending move to Las Vegas, my support for the Raiders will not waver." Okay? So far, so good. However, I'm sad on behalf of Oakland natives who are losing their team for an unprecedented second time. On top of that, I had some serious reservations about Las Vegas as a city to support the Raiders. In my view, Las Vegas does not have a very large population, and much of its success attributed to its thriving tourism industry, which depends on transient population. I was worried that there wouldn't be much in the way of local foundational grassroots fan base in Las Vegas for the Raiders, for example. My concern was that the local casinos would buy all the tickets and comp them out to visiting guests, and the Raiders wouldn't have a home field advantage. In short, I believe that Las Vegas would not be suitable home for the Raiders and that there would be very little local support. I started listening to your excellent podcast recently. The content is smart, insightful, well-produced, and Silver and Black today has become my go-to source for Raiders information. You and your organization are doing great work. When I found out that your organization was based in Las Vegas, it made me even happier. It pleases me to know that there is indeed a local fan base in Las Vegas, one that will foster and support the Raiders organization when it relocates, as much as I'm no longer worried about the move to Las Vegas. I can see now that the Raiders are going to a good home, and I trust that you and people like you are going to take great care of them. Thank you so much for all that you do, and please keep up the good work. Eric up in the Bay Area.
I talk about this on Sports Adrenaline a lot. The Golden Knights have kind of helped open up the eyes of the world, if you will, to what kind of community Las Vegas has.
Yeah.
I don't think people fully understood that there are actual people living here. It's not just the Las Vegas Strip, that there is a community here that is the same as any other community. That there's strip malls and grocery stores, and it's a big suburb is essentially what Vegas is from mountain to mountain. And there are phenomenal sports fans in this city, and probably some of the most knowledgeable sports fans that you'll find anywhere in the country because of the sports gambling aspect. Not that you have to go and bet on sports all the time, but when the lines are in front of you all the time, you tend to pay attention to things more. Sure. You're watching a midweek baseball game that maybe nobody cares about. You're paying attention to a December basketball game that nobody cares about. You're a little more engaged with things just on a day-to-day basis. People didn't understand that. They didn't realize that, it's a transient community, but these people all came from somewhere, most places that absolutely love sports.
Yeah, and Matt, it didn't help that there were detractors, and I get it. If you're in Oakland and you're one of those Bay Area folks, you're not happy that they were coming to Las Vegas, but that's changed now. Now, David Stepanian, bringing us in, he's our correspondent here. David, you grew up in L.A. with the Raiders, and now you went to Las Vegas to go to school. Tell people what you think about the Raider base of fans here in Las Vegas.
There's actually a few points I wanted to touch on this.
Oh, look at that.
It's one of my favorite questions to be asked from a visitor to Vegas is, what hotel do you live in? Just people, and that's
it's amazing that's still out there, that stigma.
When I was in high school, about 10 years ago, I would get this question so often. I worked at the food court at the Monte Carlo at Haagen-Dazs, and so many people, what floor do you live on?
That's his nickname now, Scoop.
Jabberwockies. Scoop, thanks. Jabberwockies, they have residency, they live here. That's I got that question so many times. Back then, I would say there were a lot of Broncos fans. I remember here in Vegas, and we got Broncos home games. Remember on CBS? Thank God, not anymore. But there were. I knew a lot of Broncos fans out here in Vegas, which is understandable. I mean, it is the Mountain West, I would call it.
Correct.
But no, there's always been a thriving Raiders fan base, and it's more present now than it's ever been before. And I always felt, growing up in L.A. and being at the Coliseum last week for that Rams-Raiders games, the L.A. fans are going to travel out here too. They certainly have not forgotten about the Raiders. And I saw so many L.A. Raiders T-shirts, L.A. Raiders hats, Howie Long jerseys, Bo Jackson, Marcus Allen. I saw so much L.A. Raider gear, and hey, Vegas is a lot closer than Oakland, so they're going to travel. And I'm not worried at all about the.
No, and
no-brainer.
It's really interesting because I continue to see more and more Raiders stuff. Obviously as the team comes closer, the merchandise, but also fans. You just notice now that they're coming here. You just know, like maybe I was blind to it before, but I just see a lot of it, a lot more than I had anticipated.
Yeah, I mean, I'm born and raised a Raiders fan my whole life. Obviously, born and raised Vegas, so I've been part of that culture, if you will, here in this city my entire life. When I was younger, before I had kids, my wife and I would go to Raider bars so that we could watch every single game before, you had the NFL package and all that. We'd go watch games at Raider bars around town, and there was a handful of them. And every Sunday, there were 100, 200, 300 people packed into bars, any Raider bar in the city, to watch these games.
Oh, yeah.
They've always been here. You just didn't know.
That's right. So, Eric, I want to thank you again for your nice note. It's also, we have so many fans outside of Las Vegas. It surprises me sometimes. They watch the website, they watch the show, and so we're excited that they're with us. So thank you for your support, and thank you for your note. Eric, we're going to step aside, pay some bills. When we come back, we will review the game that was against the Green Bay Packers. You're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
CBS Sports Radio. This is Silver and Black Today, live on CBS Sports Radio 1140. Here's your host, Scott Gulbranson.
Welcome back, everybody. And I just learned something earth-shattering to me. I thought I could do things. Like, I thought I was talented at stuff and that I was pretty self-sufficient. Then I learned, Matt Gutierrez just told me that he cuts his own hair. Now we'll bring Matt on here in a second, because I want to understand how does one cut.
How does it look? I kind of want to see it. Yeah, I want to see this process.
How do you explain to me how you cut your own hair? Like, real quickly to the process.
You ever heard the term, like, eyes in the back of your head? Well, there you go. That's
by the way, we always talk about your hair, and you can actually see it today. If you're streaming us on Facebook or YouTube, Periscope, you can see it. But no, do you? Like,
I don't know why this is a thing.
So wait, you use clippers? You take a comb and you just kind of know the length, and you just
clippers are amazing nowadays. You got different guards. You open and close the bear guard by itself. You can play with the lengths. You hit the fade, all that good stuff.
So like 15 years ago, you got it cut so they had it all layered, and now you just kind of go over it, and so you don't have. It's like a template.
No, not quite. I go get my hair cut somewhere and go home and go, I don't even like what they did, and I can do a better job, so I'll just handle this myself. I've been doing that for like 20 plus years, man. Seriously. Since high school, my buddies used to hang out at the house, and we'd hook each other's hair up, and I just stayed with it. My son's only had one haircut in his 13 years of life.
My God,
that wasn't from me, and that was this year.
My wife would love that because you're saving tons of money.
Tons of money, man.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look back, and our correspondent David Stepanian, who's in studio with us today, did a package here on the Raiders' 13-6 win over the Packers. We're going to run that now with a real recap of the game from Friday.
Raiders played the Packers for the fourth time in the last 5 years, including the pre- and regular season. Not much luck in the first three contests, with the Raiders losing by an average of about 10 points per game. Starters didn't play much more than one series, but they certainly got things off on the right foot.
And the deep ball, Cooper, able to haul it in down at the 35-yard line. Amari says he wasn't down. There was no whistle, and he'll pick up some extra yardage.
Well, he landed on top of the defender, which you'd think that he would, unless he wasn't down.
E.J. Manuel was your passing leader, going 8 for 12 with 87 yards. But it was Chris Warren who shined yet again with 15 carries for 54 yards and a touchdown.
Looking for a third down conversion, and they'll get it. Chris Warren tumbling down inside the 15-yard line and a 10-yard run.
Jordy Nelson played his first game against his former team, who were without most of their starters, including Aaron Rodgers. Two-time Pro Bowler Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie got his first minutes in a Raider uniform, and defensive end Arden Key was able to make a big play as well.
They will rush 5, and they'll get to Hundley, and down he goes. Mo Hurst and Arden Key with some pressure.
Though it wasn't the prettiest win, Coach John Gruden was happy to get a win at home to improve the Raiders' preseason record to 2-1.
I thought there were some good moments tonight, and there were some moments tonight that weren't good. It's been too inconsistent, but I'm not going to say much more tonight until I see the tape. I just like having Rodgers-Cromartie out here. We've had a number of corners go down, and we need somebody to come in here to make a play on a ball, somebody that has a history in this league. He's got a lot of clout, and a lot of people know who he is, and we're hoping we can rejuvenate him, get him acclimated to our defense, and potentially utilize his skills. He's proven for a long time that he can play.
Running back Chris Warren, who's been averaging 5.5 yards per rush in the preseason, also feels confident in his ability to contribute to the team.
I feel like I set out this preseason to make myself or prove that I can be on a roster. And I know that this is the preseason, there aren't starters out there when I'm in, but I do believe that I have a shot, and I do believe that I'm showing that I have the potential to definitely be on the 53. But goal line football is definitely mentality. There is technique to it, but it's definitely mentality. It's just one of those things. You got to make sure that you really just impose your will on the other team.
The Raiders will head to Seattle to face the Seahawks in their preseason finale on August 30th. For the Silver and Black Today, I'm David Stepanian.
All right, David, thanks, man. Okay, so guys, let's jump into this real quick. So, David, you did a summary of the game there. You focused on Chris Warren, I think, who's been the focus of the preseason with good reason. He's performed really, really well. I like what he said there, too, about the mentality of being a goal line runner.
I mean, go ahead, Dave.
No, well, we've seen his ability to sort of break free throughout the preseason. Again, I sort of had mixed feelings on this game overall and throughout the preseason because we're not seeing the defenses. We haven't, not a single time have we seen them play a team that's going to be their defense in week one.
Yeah, so not the first teams, right?
You got to take it with
Packers played a lot of first teamers, but he didn't get to play against them.
No,
unfortunately, that's the problem.
No, and even with that, regardless, I still love what I've seen from Chris Warren throughout the 3 weeks. I don't want that to be a major takeaway because he still looked pretty darn impressive.
Here's the thing about Chris Warren, and again, these aren't starters out there, but it doesn't take a starter to see that this kid falls forward on every touch.
That's true.
He's getting yards after contact, and is he going to sustain 3.5 yards after contact throughout the season versus starters? No, but the fact is, this is a big, powerful, bruising running back who can beat you up at the line of scrimmage. And if it's a 3rd and inches, 4th and inches, 4th and goal type of situation, this is the kind of kid that's going to be able to get you that hard extra 2 feet, 3 feet, whatever it is, because he does fall forward and he doesn't go down easily. That's what you want to see out of a guy. I get that the defenses aren't the starters out there and schemes aren't the same, and you're not going to have these gaping holes like he's getting, but it's those yards after contact that are impressive no matter who's out there, because these guys are still NFL caliber football players that he's going up against.
No doubt. And I think, again, for Warren, as Gruden has said all along, Matt, the stuff away from the ball is what he has to work on to, I think, move into a position where he's going to play more. I don't think there's any question that he makes the roster at this point, in my view.
Well, especially with the DeAndre Washington question out there, because he's not healthy, and Jalen Richard looks great right now.
Especially, coming out and catching the ball out of the backfield. He looked really good.
I think Chris Warren, I think he could be perfect in certain situations. So I would love to see John Gruden sort of let him free when the right situation calls for it. I think he's definitely going to get touches throughout the regular season.
Well, Gruden did that all the way back to his original days in Oakland with Zach Crockett. And I keep going back to Crockett. I know it's a different style, but he's still a big, powerful, bruising back that was great in those short yardage and goal line situations. I mean, he had Tyrone Wheatley there, and he had Napoleon Kaufman there, and you had that kind of thunder and lightning kind of thing. Charlie Garner, guys like that. So you could change pace up with the running backs, but then when you needed that hammer that's when you brought in a guy like Zach Crockett, and that's what Chris Warren can be.
Well, we look at the running back situation. So we talk about Chris Warren, and we're going to talk about our other favorite category, or other favorite player, and that's Martin, right? Doug Martin. So Doug Martin. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, you're a big fan.
6 attempts, 24 yards, 4 yards per average, and long of 16. Okay, so 24 yards, almost half of them, more than half of those on one run. But again, his average, I think his performance was actually poo-pooed much faster than it should have been because, yes, he ran two straight times right in the line, didn't get anything. I mean, 0, right? No gain whatsoever. A lot of people talking about they're not seeing any quickness, they're not seeing this. But in actuality, the numbers aren't that bad, Matt. They just aren't.
5 carries for 8 yards. That's what you're looking at. 5 carries.
So if he had 6 carries for 120 yards or 100, let's say he had 100 yard, he broke it on the 1 yard line, 99 yards. No, I'm saying though, but you're saying that because he had one long run that it's not valid, that he actually had a good game.
I don't,
and you can't say
I
that
don't see what you're seeing and what's being reported from Doug Martin. I don't see that.
Well,
but you talk about the first and goal carry, and he's got plenty of room. He gets through the hole, and the right side is completely opened up. There were defenders there at the goal line. He wasn't going to get in, but he was going to make it a second and goal from probably the 2 or 3 yard line. Instead, he cuts it back into heavy traffic and gets what? 2 feet? Maybe a yard? I mean, and not only that, he doesn't look quick. His cuts don't look sharp. He doesn't look quick. He doesn't have a burst. I don't get the hype behind this guy.
I understand, but we're not there every day.
Chris Warren is getting more after contact than Doug Martin has gotten the last 2 seasons as an overall average. I mean that's what you're looking at with Doug Martin right now.
Yeah, but when we get into the regular season
and he loses you a game.
No,
you're not going to be happy.
That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
I just don't. Honestly, I just don't see. I don't see the burst there.
Yes, but that you're going off one game. You're going off a couple series.
I'm going off the last 2 years of his career. Actually,
well,
that's what I'm going off.
But now is now. The past is the past. You have to. It's living in the now. YOLO.
All right. He's going Barry Bonds. The older he gets, the better he's going to be.
I don't know. Well, no, he can't do a performance enhancing.
Well, he already did.
I know. And he got popped.
Kicked to the side.
So we'll see that. But then you look at the quarterback situation. Of course, Connor Cook, I think, played himself out of a roster spot, but we'll see. E.J. Manuel, we talked about it yesterday when I saw you, Matt, throws a pass where he literally just throws it into the ground in the flat.
You know what?
I still can't get it out of my head.
Scott, I think E.J. Manuel is actually a lefty, and he doesn't know it yet. I think that's the issue, man. And I don't know that Connor Cook played him out of a roster spot because E.J. Manuel is the other guy there. So unless they find a way to bring somebody else in, one of these two guys, unfortunately, will end up on that roster. You just got to hope that Carr stays upright all season because
that's what everybody's saying, right?
You don't have any options.
There's nobody back there,
right now.
And the point, Raider fans suddenly are just massively in love with Teddy Bridgewater. Okay, so I get that. I get that Raider fans and the Raiders need to address it. They need to figure out what they're going to do at backup quarterback. But let's just tame it down. You don't know who's going to be out there, but it is a problem. We'll talk about it throughout the show as well. You look at the wide receiver core as well. Marcel Aitman, again, played well. Not big numbers here, folks. Amari Cooper, the 1 pass for 49, but he's not very good because it was just 1 pass. Yeah. And Martavis Bryant had 1 reception for 14 yards as well. So, again, but it was pretty vanilla, and the quarterback play wasn't great. So you weren't going to get a lot of action there. But we'll talk more about that. When we come back, we're going to be talking with Chris Reed about the move of Donald Penn to right tackle and what we saw in the game against the Packers and what we might see moving forward. You're listening to the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
This is Shalik Calhoun with the Oakland Raiders, and you're listening to Silver and Black today.
All right, welcome back, everybody. You are listening to the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. We were in the break continuing our conversation around Chris Warren and Doug Martin and the running back. Actually, it was mostly on Doug Martin.
It was pretty much all Doug Martin.
and
I'm just not on board, I'm sorry.
And I'm okay with that. I'll repeat what I said last week. I still like Chris Warren a lot, but I'm not convinced there either because I want to see him. And I'm disappointed that Gruden did not put him in with the first-team offensive line.
I am too.
I really wanted to see that.
Here's the thing, is I don't want Doug Martin to fail. I want to see him do well.
Right.
I want to see him come out and be that number 2 back, and like you mentioned in the break, 400 to 500 yards this season. But I just don't see it. I'm taking the under on that because I don't think that he's that guy anymore. Prove me wrong, Doug. Prove me wrong. Please prove me wrong. I want to see you prove me wrong. I'd like to see you come out and get 850 yards and half a dozen touchdowns.
But that's a fair point. I think what I notice about Raider Nation is Raider Nation likes absolutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is he's either sucks or he's great.
Right.
I think it's too early to tell. And one of the things that also I think it's too early to tell on, and we did a poll on Twitter on this, is Donald Penn's move to the right tackle. And we're going to bring in now on the attorney Michael Troiano newsmaker line, Chris Reed, our senior NFL analyst from silverandblacktoday.com. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good.
All right, you're up. You're awake. Caffeinated?
Yeah. I missed the Doug Martin debate, though.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll get into that again.
I think there's going to be plenty of it.
There's going to be,
season.
we're gonna have plenty of that throughout the year, I am sure. All right, so Chris, now I want to talk to you. You wrote a great piece we ran last night on silverandblacktoday.com. If you haven't gone to read it, do it. Penn at right tackle, work in progress. And I think one of the things that has been a little bit unfair for folks so far after the game was you saw Penn get bull rushed on the one play. You saw him struggle at times during his positioning there at right tackle. And so Raider Nation immediately wants to call it a disaster and say that it's a failure for a guy who has not practiced very much, got his first game action at a new position. Talk to me, Chris, about your story and how when you're a Pro Bowl left tackle doesn't mean that when you move to right, you instantly are going to be a star.
Yeah, it doesn't work quite like the way a video game does where you can just plug and play people anywhere. And I talked about how, doing something as simple as brushing your teeth with the other hand will show you how, getting that physical and the mental aspect of your body to work together just takes time and reps. Penn's got to do everything exactly backwards. His right foot is now his kick step instead of his left. His right arm is his main punch arm instead of his left. So it's just going to take him a little time to get used to doing everything basically backwards.
Let's talk about the one play that everybody keeps harping on. Scott mentioned it, which was where he got bull rushed. It was that third down play. Carr dropped the ball and recovered his own fumble, but that's the one everybody points to because Penn just looked he looked out of sorts on that one particular instance. But Penn is not a guy generally that's going to get bull rushed. Once he gets his feet underneath him, it almost looked like he was kind of nursing the foot a little bit, maybe trying to see what kind of pressure, what kind of weight he could put on it with that kind of push. He's played the position before. I think he's going to settle in. I don't think it's going to be the disaster that everybody thinks it's going to be.
No, when you look at the play, you can tell from the very beginning he's a bit off balance.
Mm-hmm.
And so getting hit with a bull rush in that moment was just like the worst case scenario. He didn't set an anchor very well. And again, it's just going back to him getting used to doing it, in a reverse position. It's just going to take some time, and there's plenty of things you can do from a game planning standpoint and a personnel grouping standpoint to kind of minimize the exposure while you get Penn, you have to look at as basically a rookie right tackle right now. So you got two rookie tackles you're going to have to kind of help out for a while.
That's comforting when you have that quarterback back there, especially with
I think the learning curve, though, for Penn is a little...
Yeah, it'll be a little...
Yeah.
We're talking to Chris Reed, the senior NFL analyst at silverandblacktoday.com. Now, Chris, you wrote this in your story from last night. You said, quote, "It's unrealistic to think Penn will simply start lining up at right tackle and perform as well as he did on the other side." Which we've talked about. And then you said Gruden will game plan accordingly. Talk about what you mean by game plan accordingly. For those folks who don't know the X's and O's as much, they're just fans like most of us are. What do you mean by game plan? What can Gruden do to help make sure that Penn can ease into that position and really get strong and confident?
Well, you can attack a defense without, constantly going 5 wide receiver sets and putting your tackles on islands. The first play of the game to Amari Cooper, really stands out, where you can have 21 personnel run a play action and still get a shot down the field. And it's also a perfect example because they run a fake ISO, and there's a pretty big gap between Colton Miller and Osemele, and Miller's guys able to beat him to the inside, get some pressure on Carr, and it affects the throw. Well, if Lynch would have just chipped as he's going through that hole, Carr would have been able to step up and hit Amari in stride, and that probably ends in a touchdown. So there's plenty of things you can do to still attack down the field. It doesn't have to be quick slants and drag routes. You can still get down the field and protect your quarterback at the same time.
Yeah, I'm thinking you're going to see a lot of coverages rolled certain ways, or a lot of protections rolled certain ways. I think you're going to see a little more of Carr getting outside, a little more bootleg style. The play action I think is going to be huge. But yeah, I mean, you can go double tight to that left side if you feel like Miller's going to need some help or he's getting eaten up by some of these pass rushers. There's so many things you can do to help out. Basically, give those guys some assistance on the outside, and like you mentioned, not put them on an island.
Right now, Chris, and I think both guys struggled because they're both learning to play their position at this point. Chris, earlier in the week you did a story too. We're going to shift gears here for the rest of the time with you, and that is to talk about wide receiver. Now, John Gruden has called out his wide receivers repeatedly to say, look, he needs somebody to step up in that number 3 spot. Everybody expected it to be Martavis Bryant after the trade of a third-round pick for him. That has not happened yet. The whole White Tiger story, or was it White Tiger? Yeah, White Tiger, not White Lion. White Lion was an 80s hair metal band, sorry. And so we're in that position. We look at these guys. You talked about the guys that you like on the roster so far. At this point, seeing what we saw the other night and the offense not really performing up to what people would want with the backup quarterbacks, where do you see that wide receiver battle? Who at this point has impressed you the most, and who is the odd man out most likely to be left outside the 53-man roster?
Oh, well, the guys that I've got making it are Amari Cooper, Jordy Nelson, Martavis Bryant, Ryan Switzer. I had Griff Whalen, but he did get injured. It sounds like his X-rays came back negative. If he doesn't end up being healthy, I'd say Dwayne Harris would take his spot. He had that 70-yard return in that game. And I think they're going to keep Marcel Aitman. He hasn't really flashed a lot in preseason, but he's a guy that really fits what they want to do, and he's just going to get better as he learns to use his size.
Yeah, is Aitman going to be – so you're thinking he's going to make the roster, or is he going to be a practice squad guy?
I think they could stash him on practice squad. I don't think he's flashed enough that somebody would necessarily steal him, but I think they're going to want to hold on to him. I think he fits what they want to do.
Yeah, I really like Marcel Aitman. I liked him before the draft as one of the targets for the Raiders, just based solely on his size. I mean, kind of a Andre Holmes style in size, not the speed that Holmes had, but I think a better overall football player than what you got out of Andre Holmes. Big question mark, Seth Roberts. I think he's the biggest enigma there because, I mean,
he's only targeted once in this game against the Packers.
He's had so many problems hanging onto the ball. It always seemed to come up roses whenever he caught a touchdown. The Raiders would win the game, but I don't think he's the type of guy that you can count on going into a season to help you win games.
Chris, does Seth Roberts have trade value?
I think that everybody in the league knows they're going to get rid of him, so I don't think anybody would. I saw a report by Vic Tafur that they were trying to trade him during the draft. Mm-hmm. And also on Saturday, you have, the mini free agency where the rosters are getting cut down. So the people will have plenty of options to bring in a wide receiver for free.
Yeah, Switzer and Whalen, to me, are obviously similar players, right? Mm-hmm. Switzer came in. I was really excited that they signed him. I haven't seen much there either. But again, kickoffs, people talk about kickoff returners and how it's a good investment to get somebody who can do it. I just don't see it much anymore because of the rules of kicking in the league. You just can't.
And I think Dwayne Harris is that guy. Yeah, most likely he'll be the one in the return game. Yeah, that's unfortunate about Whalen because he has looked good, and it's funny because that was Tony's guy, right? But when he first got signed, that was his guy, and I didn't think he had a shot at making it. And then you get into preseason and camps, and he's looking good, but it's unfortunate that he got hurt. But Ryan Switzer will step up and he'll fill that role just fine. Yeah, and Chris, while we have you too, talk about from an offensive standpoint. Derek Carr in the postgame press conference, they asked him a little bit about play action and the use of play action, even though he wasn't in there that long.
Seeing how this offense has run so far, how big of a boom is that going to be for not only Carr, but the rest of the offense in general, just the way that they're moving the ball around and moving the quarterback around?
Oh, it's going to, the biggest thing it's going to do is just confuse the secondary. The teams are going to try to roll the safety down because of the obvious power rushing game that you're going to get. And then it's going to let Carr sit in a pocket and just like the first play of the game, he's going to have wide open receivers running across the field in a situation that he's got max protection and be able to just lead them into the end zone.
Yeah, you show me a corner in the NFL that can stay with Amari Cooper. And it's not even just about his straight line speed. His footwork is so good and so crisp, and his route running is great, and he knows how to get open. As long as Cooper can hang on to the ball, I think him and Carr are going to have a big season together.
Yeah, it was a nice catch, too, on an underthrown ball.
Like Chris mentioned, he wasn't able to step into it quite the way he should have.
Right.
But you got to get that ball out in front of Cooper and let him go get it.
Awesome. Chris, man, thank you. As always, make sure you follow Chris on Twitter, Chris Reed _NFL. Check out his stuff on silverandblacktoday.com. I think he's the best in the business without question. Chris, man, thanks again. We'll talk to you real soon.
Yeah, talk to you guys later.
All right, that was Chris Reed, Senior NFL Analyst at silverandblacktoday.com. We are going to step aside. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation on players that impressed us during the Packers game. You're listening to Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
CBS Sports Radio. Help us talk the Silver and Black. Call us at 702-889-5978. Here's Matt Gutierrez and your host, Scott Gulbranson, on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
Yes. Welcome back, everybody. We are silverandblacktoday.com, Silver and Black Today show on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. I am Scott Gulbranson. He is Matt Gutierrez next to me, and David Stepanian also joins us in studio as well. All right, so let's finish up this next segment here, guys, and talk a little bit about the game that was too. We talk about the quarterback situation in the offense. If you look at the offensive possessions for the Raiders, right? So we look at first quarter, Carr goes down. They should have gotten down there. They had a first and goal, couldn't punch it in, end up getting the field goal. Okay,
I blame Doug Martin for that.
Yes, it's all Doug Martin's fault. And so is Khalil Mack holding out. So
he was going to be the blocking fullback on that play.
Then you look at the rest of that going into the third quarter, actually. Here's the next possessions. Punt, interception, punt, missed field goal, punt, end of half, punt, fumble.
All I heard was Cook, Manuel, Cook, Manuel, yes. Cook, Manuel. I mean, that's what that comes down to.
Yes.
You have nobody running the team.
And they got into the red zone just 3 times. And if you look at some of the team statistics, third down efficiency was at 47%, which is actually better than I thought it would be with as bad as they looked. Here's one thing that I have a concern on. I know this will probably be the only time we talk about it unless something drastic happens. Punting. Okay, get Johnny Townsend out of Florida, really impressive young kid, not punting that great.
No, not yet. I mean, I think special teams is huge. We know that. Special teams is it's a third of the game, essentially. I think too much goes into a lot of times when you have a big leg like Marquette King had, where he can really boot it. I don't know that extra 5 yards from time to time makes that big of a difference. I mean, I have to go through and look at numbers, but when you're talking about the 20-yard line or the 23-yard line or the 18-yard line, I don't know that there's a huge difference there. Where it comes in is being able to pin teams down on the 1, 2, 3-yard line, somewhere in there where you can really back guys up against the goal line. And I don't think we've seen that from him yet. He hasn't had enough control of the ball, I guess would be the best way to put it, as a punter.
No, he's struggled. I thought he did a little bit better against the Packers, but a 37 average, not so good.
I feel like where we were strong so many years ago was our kicking game, and it's sort of like I'm heading into the season not so confident.
You know what, though? How many games did Shane Leckler and Sebastian Janikowski win for the Raiders as far as having great seasons? Because they were largely there for the worst stretch in Raiders history. Yeah, they were great.
Unfortunately.
Hall of Fame caliber at their position, but it's not like they were, helping the team go to 12-4 records every year.
I remember some of those years being so bad that in fantasy football, I wanted to draft Janikowski because I knew that's the only way.
I took him every year just because.
Do you guys remember when Lane Kiffin had him kick a 76-yarder?
Lane Kiffin's such a clown show.
And he had the distance.
Clown.
He had the distance. He almost nailed a 76-yarder.
That shows you what kind of head coach Lane Kiffin is.
He got fired a few days after that, I think.
With good reason. They shouldn't have let him get it. They shouldn't have gone to the locker room.
Oh, they're on their own 45-yard line going for a field goal.
They should have left Kiffin on the 50. Just stay there. Just don't come back here anymore. You're done.
Now, one of the players that really jumped out on Friday night was Fadol Brown. Had a great game. Here's a guy who really is fighting for his job and fighting for a roster spot, and he showed up. Now, we'll talk about Arden Key in a second because that's the sexy one. That's everyone's talking about that, and that's Matt's guy. I have Doug Martin. You have Arden Key. How's that?
I think I'm going to win this battle, though.
So, but Brown really had a good game, and he showed me his motor. And after the game, in his comments, he said, "Listen, last year the coaches didn't really play me the way that I could be played. This year they're using me in a role that I feel like I can succeed in, and that's a huge deal."
Well, I mean, how many times have we heard that now from different guys that they weren't in the right position to excel, right? I mean, you look at Bruce Irvin, who has had a great career up to this point, and then you put him in a position last year where he's got to play standing up and going backwards and in coverage, when this is a guy who clearly excels with his hand in the dirt, coming off the edge, getting after the quarterback. So, it's not always about where you're drafted or what type of team you're going to. It's often about scheme and how you fit into certain things and the way that they use you that helps you succeed in the NFL. And if Brown can get into a scheme like it seems he is now, where he can succeed, I think he's going to be a solid player.
That's right. And of course, Arden Key. So we'll talk about that as well. Key, again, sometimes statistics can be misleading. We were talking about that earlier. But you look at the way he played, that first step that he had, the way he created disruption on that line, going against, by the way, Pro Bowl left tackle for the Green Bay Packers. And so he is creating havoc there. Then you add in P.J. Hall, you add in Mo Hurst, who again performed. I mean, they've been consistent. And to me, this is huge for this team because it's been so long since the Raiders had to push up the middle. Now they got cornerbacks and safeties who are actually playing the ball well, okay? And so now the defense is starting to work together, something we haven't seen in quite a while.
Yeah, and you look at the kind of push that they were able to generate in this game, and that's without Bruce Irvin and Khalil Mack out there. So that shows you the depth already. They're going to have some cuts on this team that are going to be really hard for fans to deal with, I think, because this defensive line looks really good. It looks like you have some legitimate football players out there that could end up being Pro Bowl selections throughout their career. P.J. Hall is just motor, man. He just goes all the time.
Arden Key, I feel like he was so disappointed in himself after his showing in the Rams game. And did you just see how pumped up and excited he was after that sack? I mean, that was huge just for his confidence. That was a huge confidence booster for him going into this fourth week of the preseason, going into the regular season. It was huge because he has so many expectations built on him. And when you have a bad showing like he did against the Rams, and now you've sort of fulfilled something for yourself.
Correct.
And it's something that you can look positive.
Well, I'm just so excited about that whole defensive front. Then you add in Irvin, and if you can get
be good,
and Mack will be back for the first game,
averaging at 11, allowing 11.5 points per game in the preseason. It's incredible.
It's incredible. But to me, when they're all together, rotating those rookie guys in with the veterans that are doing well as too. I think it's going to be a really underrated defense.
I honestly feel like this is the first time that you'll be able to see the Raiders. First time in a long time that you'll be able to see the Raiders get into the fourth quarter of a game and still have the ability to put fresh bodies out there on defense, whether it's in the secondary, whether it's on the defensive line, defensive end in particular. You're going to have fresh bodies out there to keep that pressure on the opposing offense. You haven't seen that lately. You haven't seen it over the last few years because they haven't had that kind of depth. They've had decent frontline starting, but they haven't had any depth behind them. And you get into late game situations, and now you're getting pushed back, and you're not able to get off the field on a third down. You're not able to force that punt and give the ball back to your offense when you need to score or turn the ball over when you need to stop. Now I think you're going to be able to see a lot more of that.
Yeah, and then you add in the group that's been another two guys that I was really impressed with. Nick Morrow again, as well.
Linebackers,
yes,
finally.
The linebackers playing well. And again, that's without Whitehead getting a lot of action. That's without Johnson getting. And again, the key, and they don't have this on the offensive line, but the key to winning in the NFL is depth. Because guys get banged up. Guys miss a week, especially on the defensive side of the ball. You see it a lot. So to have that depth, to add Rogers Cromartie in the defensive backfield, I mean,
big get right there. I think
underrated. So too. I think so too. And so to me, the way the Raiders are putting together their team for this year and the depth that is there is going to be big for them as they go down the line.
Talk about a little bit of the offensive depth or lack thereof when we come back, but I think it's finally flipped. You see a lot more on the defense now than you did on the offense.
That's right. You are listening to the Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio 1140 AM. We're going to step aside. We'll come back after the top of the hour sports update. And when we do, we're going to continue to talk about the game. We're going to also talk with Jen Mueller from Root Sports Northwest and KIRO
Hey now,
Radio.
Las Vegas. This is Dustin.
The most in-depth coverage of the Silver and Black as they set their sights on Las Vegas for 2020. Live from the CBS Sports Radio 1140 studios, it's Silver and Black today. Join the conversation by calling 702-889-5978. Now, here's Scott Gulbranson and Matt Gutierrez.
Back. Whoa. Welcome back, everybody. silverandblacktoday.com. Who's cutting off my mic?
I think it was Colin.
That's like
Scott,
the Conor McGregor-Floyd Mayweather press conference.
This is how you know things have changed in this city. We're in the break, and we start getting into Golden Knights talk and the point total for the season, whether we're going over, under. I mean, hockey talk as we're getting ready for the football season.
I'll tell you what, 94.5 points is pretty bad for a team that's 8-1 to win the Stanley Cup at that same sports book. So, of course, people are going to take the over.
Take the over.
What? Stepanian's getting all into the gaming stuff here.
That's what I'm about, man. That's what I'm about, man. You got to talk more about gaming here, I believe. I think we got to add an extra element.
Yeah, I got too many kids. I don't have money to bet.
Yeah.
But I do have to tell you guys this story because Matt, last week we started off the show and you were talking about your son's killer goal in hockey.
Oh, you should have seen his goal yesterday. Sorry,
another one. Yeah. So, but this is, as your kids grow, your kids are still pretty young. I have one that's a senior in college. So your parenting changes a little bit. And we get a call from my daughter yesterday who we've always taught our kids, when you have a credit card, okay, pay it off every month. Mm-hmm. Don't ever leave a balance. So she calls, and she had a little bit of a balance, no big deal, because she's pretty smart about her money. But she has a balance. She's like, "Did you know they charge you interest?"
Yes.
This is a college student who is in honors, has been amazing academically, right? Very proud of her. But it was a great lesson. It was like, hey, yes, that's how they make money. They don't want you to pay your bill every month.
I'm guessing she's not a finance major?
No, she's a business major.
Oh, well.
Absolutely. Yeah. She paid her own way to school through scholarships. I love it.
That's awesome.
So, but anyway, yeah, so that was fun. Credit cards.
Yeah.
Now, guys,
scary stuff.
We talked about earlier the Donald Penn move to right tackle. We did put a poll up on Twitter, and we asked folks out there, you and Raider Nation, are you at all worried about the ability of Donald Penn to move to right tackle for the 2018 season? The choices were no, give him time. Yes, it's a disaster, which is very much Raider Nation-like, and too early to tell.
The sky is falling.
Yes, and after 160 votes or so, we have 51% say it's too early to tell, which I agree. 33% say no, give him time, and 16% think the world is ending. Yes, it's a disaster.
Well, it's not a Raider Nation answer.
No, it was actually
16.
pretty positive.
Well, we have smart listeners on the show.
Yes, we do.
Here's my question: Who on this roster, who that will end up on the 53-man roster, is a better option than Donald Penn at the right tackle spot? I don't think you can find somebody. I don't think
Teddy
there's
Bridgewater.
a single. Can he block? I don't think there's a single person on this roster that gives you a better shot at right tackle than Donald Penn does. And I know he's not a natural fit there, but he has played there from time to time in his career. He is very capable of making that position change. He's a smart, veteran offensive lineman. He is an all-pro. There's no reason to think that he can't pick this up. And he's, again, the best lineman on this roster.
And I love Chris Reed's analogy, which is imagine trying to brush your teeth with the other hand.
Right.
It's not fun.
It's awkward, but he has done it before. It's think about brushing your teeth. Maybe if you broke your right arm as a kid and spent 6 months in a cast and you had to use your left hand.
Right.
If 5 years down the road you had to do it again, there'd be a little muscle memory there.
If you travel and you got to drive on the other side of the road.
I've never done that.
I have. It's freaky.
I'm scared to death to try that.
Your brain gets trained into doing things like that. Now, the other thing, though, is a lot of fans talk about, and this is where the Teddy Bridgewater stuff comes, a lot of fans said, well, boy, we better have a good backup quarterback because you have two guys at the tackle positions who are, in essence, learning a position. I think Penn will come along fast. Miller, we'll see. But does that create, in your guys' mind, then a really big pressing need to go out and maybe find another quarterback because you don't really have the confidence? I mean, John Gruden wouldn't commit to either one of those guys at backup yesterday after the game.
Dude, E.J. Manuel has fumbled in every single game.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, he's a lefty. He doesn't know it. He's a lefty.
And Connor Cook just hasn't looked good. Since the first game, since the Lions.
Here's what's funny, okay? I don't think you're looking. What is it? To the 26th of August, it's not going to matter who they bring in as the backup at this point because whoever that guy is, if Carr does go down, is not going to be able to step in and win this team games. It's
correct.
It's too late in the game at this point.
Yep.
So by the time, let's say you do bring in Teddy Bridgewater and Carr goes down in week 2, when does Bridgewater pick up the offense well enough to lead this team to wins? Maybe the midpoint of the season. By then, your season's lost.
Right. And let me say this to Raider Nation. There was only a couple of them, so it was tempered versus what it was like maybe even last year. And I want to preface this by saying this is not a political statement. That is, Colin Kaepernick is not an option, okay?
Come on.
Don't think about, I saw some people tweeted at us, man. Cap, what about Cap? What? No. 2 years on the sideline, not doing anything. Don't need the issue. You have a team that is in transition. You have a team that's trying to gel. The last thing you need is somebody who's there for other than just football.
Kaepernick came in the year that the Niners went to the Super Bowl, replaced Alex Smith midseason, and was so dynamic, both running and passing the ball, and led them to a Super Bowl.
Yes.
Didn't get the win. Probably should have, all honesty, but didn't get the win. And from there, just little by little fell off to the point where he was no longer a viable starter, in my opinion. He's not a top 32 quarterback in this league. I don't even know if he's a top 64 quarterback in this league anymore. And if he is, he's a fringe guy. He's not somebody that you have to take a chance on when there's so much controversy surrounding him. Whether you agree or disagree with the controversy, it's there. It's going to be there. It's going to be a media circus. Do you really want that for a guy that's not going to see the field? No. I mean, it's not like he is the incumbent starter. He's not the face of a team. You don't bring in a backup with that much baggage and then have to go and deal with all of that.
No, and so I think they need to look at options because depending on where they decide to do, at this point, it's E.J. Manuel right now as your number 2. It has to be just because.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
But my point is,
I have to agree with that.
But because Connor Cook, I think he's regressed so much in 2 weeks. It's unbelievable.
But Manuel hasn't progressed.
I understand.
He hasn't done at least Cook. You had tiny little glimpses in week 1 where he looked halfway decent.
Potential.
You haven't seen Manuel look good at all.
But Matt, you know too, and most NFL coaches will always go with a more seasoned veteran, even if they're not the better player. It just happens, and I think Gruden's very much that way, i.e., in your opinion, Doug Martin, right? So it's the same kind of situation.
But what about
where you're gonna keep
everything
the guy.
goes back to Martin with this guy, man. He loves him.
No, but look, Connor Cook, that play where he just badly underthrew it should have been a touchdown to Dwayne Harris, but he badly underthrew it, and it was an interception instead. Yep. And he had that other pick 6 that was called back because of the penalty. He's just had some really shoddy moments.
I'm glad you put an O in there at the last second. That was close.
No, shoddy. Shoddy. He has had some really
shoddy.
Colin's over there with a finger over the dump button, man.
He's like,
ready to go.
He's ready to bleep him.
No, I agree. He's looked terrible, but so is Manuel. I mean, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, right? I mean, that's what you're looking at. Neither one of these guys are going to come in and win the Raiders games. That's what it comes down to. Penn, Miller, keep Carr upright. just keep him upright this season. Let's make sure this guy doesn't get hurt because he wins and losses rest solely on his shoulders as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's the big deal, and I think that we all underestimate, too, how hard it is to go out and get a quarterback.
Yeah.
So if Gruden, I really think in Gruden's mind, he probably thinks, hey, if we can get somebody, we need to bring somebody in. Who that is, I have no idea. There used to be guys that were always like a little retired, but you could get them back in. Like remember John Kitna and those type of guys. Everybody would sign them because
they had a pretty good game. Hey, oh man, I remember that game against the Eagles.
Yeah,
and nobody expected the Cowboys to even get remotely close in that game. But I think they only lost by like 1 or something.
That's a heck of a name bringing up from the past. Wow.
It was like 22-21 final.
Well, and then you had the
Wasn't he like
Hasselbacks.
5'4"?
No, Kitna was a big dude.
He looked so small out there, though. He always looked, for whatever
he had
reason.
Kind of a skinny neck. But
he always looked like a small, like just a short guy out there. Like it was me out there playing quarterback. I don't know why. He just always looked that way to me.
And then you had, Carson Palmer made a career out of it before he actually settled and actually did pretty well in Arizona, even though he was brittle. Then you had the Hasselbacks, right? Those guys always got signed as a backup somewhere. So it'll be interesting to see who they can, because you don't want to go get some undrafted college kid. That's not going to help you.
No.
But
we'll find out in a week. I mean, these rosters, every roster out there has about 90 players on it, and they're all going to dump close to 40. That's a lot of guys out there that are going to be looking for jobs.
Yes, it is. So we'll check it out and see what happens. Listen, the next hour I want to highlight for you guys, we're going to start looking forward a little bit to the Seahawks game, which is on Thursday. So the first Thursday game for the Raiders this year is in the preseason. Again, they play another team that they're going to play in the regular season.
At least it's not week 2.
That's right. And the team that they're going to play in London is the Seahawks. So that'll be interesting. We're going to talk to Jen Mueller, who is the sideline reporter on KIRO Radio and also on Root Sports Northwest. She's going to give us the lowdown on them. There's obviously 2 guys, and Matt, there is a strong connection with the Raiders because of Ken Norton Jr. now being there as well. Then add in the AFC West with Schottenheimer being there as the offensive. There's a lot of connections there, which we're going to talk about with her as well.
Yeah, this rivalry goes back quite a ways. I mean, you go back to Bo Jackson days, right? Nobody catches Bo as he's running out of the King Dome tunnel. I mean, these 2 teams have a history. It'll be it's always fun when they meet up. It still feels like there's a rivalry there.
Yeah, the Bosworth hit that was happened in the old King Dome.
Remember that? Yep.
Oh my gosh, it was terrible.
God, if Bo would have stayed healthy, man. Yeah. What would his numbers have been if he was only football? If he had stayed healthy and played football only.
Amazing.
God.
He was an amazing baseball player, too, though.
Yeah,
so,
he was.
You have been listening, and you will be listening here after the break to Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. We'll be right back.
CBS Sports Radio. This portion of Silver and Black Today is powered by the law office of Michael Troiano.
Hey, this is Rodney Hudson. You're listening to Silver and Black Today.
Rodney Hudson, the anchor of that Raiders line. Amazing guy at center.
QB of the line, man.
That's right. We are back here on the Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. in Las Vegas. Now we go out again on the attorney Michael Troiano Newsmaker line, and we bring in Root Sports and KIRO personality, I should say. She is the sideline reporter for the Seahawks and also does in-game for the Seattle Mariners. So she's living like my dream, 2 sports. She's a 2-sport star like Bo Jackson. And Jen Mueller. And Jen is also an author. So her latest book, The Influential Conversationalist, Conversation Skills That Develop Leadership Potential, is available now. I suggest you pick it up on Amazon.com. She's here to talk about the Seahawks. Jen, how you doing this morning?
I am doing well. And you know what? If I thought of myself as Bo Jackson during this time of year, I think I would be better off. I usually just feel like I'm losing my mind trying to figure out if we're talking about, points or touchdowns or runs or DL, IR. I feel like I'm going crazy. But actually, I'm just Bo Jackson.
That's right. See, you have to play that up. But you, I mean, you do such an amazing job and working both sports and your background too. And I'll ask you about this later, but I want to cue it up. And that is, you actually did some officiating both flag football, high school football. We'll talk about that as it relates to some of the new NFL rules in a little while. But we want to touch a little bit on the Seahawks first, of course. And we know how much Seahawks fans love the Raiders. But there's lots of changes this year for the Seahawks. I mean, you look at the coaching staff changes, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, vets like Sherman, Bennett gone. How has it come together in this camp and then preseason with all of these new pieces, new systems under Pete Carroll?
Yeah, you know what? I think that sometimes people hear the word change and they assume it's going to be bad. And I know that for our fan base in Seattle, and for all the 12s, it's hard when you don't have some of those recognizable names like Michael Bennett and Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor. But, when it comes to the change that happened on defense, that transition actually happened in the middle of last year when Sherm got injured, when Cam got injured, when Cliff Averill was no longer able to play. So they have already kind of started that from a personnel standpoint. When you bring Ken Norton back in, who you're familiar with in Oakland, it's a new old face, right? He had been with his team before, so it's been pretty easy for him to come back in and gel and really to play to the strength of that defense. He is a more aggressive play caller, having been a former linebacker. The strength of the Seahawks defense right now is its linebackers and Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright, so I think that that's a positive. On the offensive side, you change offensive coordinators, both in Darrell Bevell and Tom Cable, who's now in Oakland, and I think that it's just a different voice. For as talented and as great as those guys were, sometimes you just need a different person to deliver the message. Also, with Tom Cable, it's his own blocking scheme that Seattle had used quite a bit in the last few years. Now they've gone to more of a power scheme, which should help out. So overall, I think the change is positive, and I don't think that it's been a hard adjustment for most of these guys.
Jen, Matt Gutierrez here. You talked about Ken Norton Jr. being an aggressive play caller and having that linebacker mentality there, but he lost favor in Oakland because he wasn't aggressive enough, because he tended to his defenses tended to sit back a little bit and be more reactionary instead of going forward. How much influence do you think he had on the Raiders defense versus how much Jack Del Rio actually had on that defense? Because if you go back to even Denver, Del Rio had a defense there that looked like it could be great and was always just really good, and then he leaves and Wade Phillips takes over, and that's the best defense we've seen in years. Is that the situation where Newton Jr. Del Rio had too much influence, and now you'll really get to see what Ken Norton Jr. can do?
Without knowing Jack Del Rio personally, I'm wondering if part of it just isn't Ken Norton Jr. not having grown fully into that role. Because he talked to us about that a couple of weeks ago, about needing to go away. He and Pete Carroll have worked together so often and so long, going back to their days at SC, going back to Norton's playing days, that I think he said he needed to get away, make his own mistakes, come up with his own answers to questions, and kind of go through that process on his own. I think his time in Oakland was a growth process for him. And so he's not going to push the envelope with a coach that he doesn't have the same relationship with as Pete Carroll. But his relationship with Pete is different. And Pete, as a former DB, is the guy who's going to play it a little bit safer. Norton, as a linebacker, is going to be a little bit more aggressive. I don't know if there's fault to give in Oakland, but I do think that there's a comfort level in Seattle and a chance for Ken to really grow into who he is as a play caller and a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and Jen, we're talking to Jen Mueller from KIRO Radio up in Seattle and Root Sports Northwest. She is an in-game reporter for both the Seahawks and the Seattle Mariners. Jen, one of the big issues, and I have a good friend here in Las Vegas, Philip Wiseman. I want to give him a shout out. He lives and dies with the Seahawks, and the one thing I always hear him talk about for the last few years has been that offensive line, and the reason that you've seen Russell Wilson get hurt sometimes and really take a beating. Now at left tackle, you have Dwayne Brown, obviously a Pro Bowler, Justin Britt, solid in the center there. The right tackle position has been an issue for the Seahawks. You bring in DJ Fulker now. How is that working out, and does it look like that unit's going to gel and be much better than it has been in the past?
Yeah, and here's what I'm going to say, because I've said it in Seattle, and so it would be disingenuous if I didn't say it to a larger audience base. I think that the conversation around the offensive line at a national level for the Seahawks is, quite honestly, quite lazy. Because the conversation that's happened in the offseason, they have not accounted for the pieces that you have just said. You cannot have a bad offensive line when you have left tackle, when you have a Pro Bowler at left tackle in Dwayne Brown. You bring in DJ Fluker at right guard. He had a tremendous trap block on Friday night against the Vikings. He is a large man that blocks out the sun. When he is playing next to Jermaine Ifedi at right tackle, it looks considerably different than it did last year. Justin Britt is not only solid, but, I think he really does, as you mentioned, quarterback of the offensive line. He is the guy that brings it together. And Ethan Posick at left guard, he showed a lot as a rookie, and they expect big things from him this year. And when you take a look again at the scheme, when you're asking an offensive line to power block instead of doing all the cut blocking, they are going to get better just by virtue of that is an easier scheme to play. And it sets everybody else up for a little bit more success when you've got runners that need to have a first step forward instead of side to side like Marshawn Lynch can do and could do very well in Seattle. So I think if you only look at names and you don't recognize the names, or if you only look at stats from last year, it's easy to say that the offensive line is the weak spot, and I just don't think that that's the case this year.
Hey, Jen, David Stepanian here. It's been over 15 years since the Seahawks left the AFC West. Now, I grew up in L.A., and I remember not being too fond of the Seahawks when they both played in the AFC West. Now, is there still, it's been a long time, but is there still any sort of animosity? I mean, the Raiders are playing the Seahawks twice. We got a game coming up this weekend, October 14th in London. Is there any sort of animosity remaining between these two teams?
I think that because they're the Raiders, there's got to be animosity between them and every other team they play. When I first came into the Seahawks organization as their sideline reporter, the only place I would not wear a Seahawks logoed shirt on the sidelines was with Raiders fans because I didn't know what they were going to do. Now, I would say this. I think that Raiders fans are among the best in football. I do watch myself a little bit more there than any place else. But, yeah, I mean, for those who've been lifetime Seahawks fans, absolutely there is still something there. I don't think among current players it feels the same. I think you would probably pick like the 49ers or the Rams as being more of their, from player to player kind of rivalry. But sure, it's fun. I'm going to be very curious to see what happens when we go to London and play. I have no idea what that fan base is going to be like. I don't know how many Raiders fans have bought tickets. I know Seahawks fans are super stoked about it, but that's going to add a new element and dimension to the rivalry.
Well, Jen, they call it Raider Nation for a reason. When you get out to London, you're going to see just how well those guys travel. Every time they go, whether it's Mexico City, London, wherever, and they're everywhere. But you talked about current players. Seahawks have a current player that spent his entire career in Oakland. Sebastian Janikowski. How do you like having this guy? Right, he's a fun guy. I've been around him a bunch up in Oakland. Fun guy to be around. What have you seen from Jano up there? And you saw the other day kicking bombs still.
Yeah, I love Sebastian Janikowski, and I will be honest. I waited a few weeks. I wanted to feel him out. I didn't want to just jump in his face and introduce myself, but I've watched him the last couple of weeks in our meal room on the road. I go down and I usually get breakfast, sit by myself, have a cup of coffee, and I've noticed that he does the same thing on the opposite side of the room, and he and I are the only ones that pick up a copy of the newspaper and read the newspaper because he and I are the same age. We're both 40. And I mentioned this to him on the sideline the other day when I finally, introduced myself after, we kind of gave each other the looks on the sideline of, hey, why are you in my space? Why are you in my space sort of thing. He is awesome. And he was giving Michael Dixon, our new punter, a hard time for never reading the newspaper. And so I feel like we have already bonded. And when I mentioned, hey, look, I'll stay out of your way when you're kicking on the sidelines. You don't have to worry about me. He goes, I'm not going to be the one that's kicking on the sidelines. I'm too old. I'm going to save my legs, for when it really counts.
He's not one to warm up much.
Humor. Yeah. But how about that? He doesn't need to warm up much, and he's still kicking balls.
Yeah,
amazing.
I really appreciate him already.
Well, Jen, Jen Mueller from KIRO Radio and Root Sports Northwest. She is the sideline reporter for the Seattle Seahawks. Want to appreciate that. Also, again, make sure she's an accomplished author and speaker, so make sure you check out her book, The Influential Conversationalist, Conversation Skills That Develop Leadership Potential. Really cool because you use sports to get people to talk to other folks and advance their career, so we appreciate that. And Jen, we'll have you on closer to the October 14th game. We really appreciate you taking the time today.
Sounds great. Talk to you guys soon.
All right, take care. Jen Mueller again from KIRO Radio and Root Sports Northwest. When we come back, we're going to be calling our audible with Matt Gutierrez. He'll walk you through that. You're listening to Silver and Black Today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 AM.
The only way to take Silver and Black Today with you is with the radio.com app. Download it today and search CBS Sports Radio 1140 in Las Vegas and listen to us anytime, anywhere.
That's right, radio.com. Take us with you. You can listen to us anywhere, especially when the football season starts. All right, one of my favorite segments now. It's a new one, but we love it. Matt leads this one. It's called The Audible. Matt, take it over, brother.
So we had the big news this week with Obi Melifonwu being cut. And there's still the potential, I guess, that he can be there, put on IR, blah, blah, blah. I don't think you ever see Obi play for the Raiders again. But it got me thinking because Obi's a second-round pick. They took Obi Melifonwu in the second round. And the big question mark when they took him was, first of all, why are you taking a guy that's kind of more of a project style with that second pick when you can address other needs? Or you can get a guy that's a proven player at that spot. Obi was an athletic freak. It reminded me a lot of Al Davis kind of picks, where he would just go after the biggest, strongest, fastest kind of player versus going after who might actually be a fit or be an actual football player as opposed to just a freak athlete. And that's kind of what Obi ended up looking like, was just a freak athlete that maybe didn't have the heart, as Gruden has kind of alluded to, or just didn't have the overall talent to play that position. My thing here is, why has McKenzie shown this willingness to go after project-style guys early in the draft? That's what I wanted to get into. It's not so much missing on guys as it is going after projects when maybe you don't need to do that so early in the draft. If you go back to his first draft in 2012, you can kind of throw that out. They didn't have any first or second round picks. They didn't get anything until a third round compensatory pick with Tony Bergstrom. And that was kind of just, you get your feet under you kind of thing. But then you get into the 13 draft. DJ Hayden. Here's a guy coming off a major, almost died on the field injury. Had the heart surgery. I mean, he's got a scar from basically his neck down to his belly button.
The zipper.
Yeah. DJ Hayden, you needed cornerbacks, right? But why go after a guy in the first round? And I know they traded down. They were the number 3 pick that year, and they traded with Miami. Just switched picks, right? But you take DJ Hayden, who was without question a project-style guy. He wasn't a number 1 corner. He never looked like a number 1 corner.
I agree with that. And then that same draft, you have Menelik Watson and Sio Moore.
Okay. Sio Moore. Sio Moore was fun. Don't get me wrong. Sio Moore was a fun guy, character guy,
but that
high motor, but wasn't a great linebacker.
66
and
overall.
Menelik Watson, number 2 pick in the draft that year for the Raiders, a second-round pick, project guy.
Right.
And never panned out. Got beat a ton. They shipped him to Denver.
Yeah.
Got beat some more, and he's never on the field on top of it. He's injured a lot.
But then, of course, 2014, Mack, Carr, Jackson, Ellis, right?
And that was the big one.
That was the big one.
And those 3 guys regraded as first-round guys.
Yes.
And I don't know if you knew this. Mack and Carr were number 1 and number 2 on the Raiders board, period, going into that draft.
Yeah.
Number 1 and number 2 on their board. Not for, if Mack comes to us in the first. No, number 1 on their board was Mack. Number 2 on their board was Carr. If they could have drafted number 1 and number 2 overall, those were the 2 guys they were going to take. So they hit big in 2014.
Yes, and then 15, obviously Amari Cooper, still jury out. We'll see what happens.
No, so I don't have a problem with the Amari Cooper
where
pick.
he was drafted, it was appropriate.
Fine with
in
that.
my view.
Mario Edwards, what are we going to get out of him? He had a great rookie season. It looked like he was going to be good, but you're not seeing anything now. Clive Walford looked like he was going to be a good one and turned out to be just not reliable. And then you go into the next year. You go into
Carl Joseph, who's about to lose his job.
But here's the thing. Carl Joseph, you drafted another injured player. He was coming off of knee surgery. So again, you're trying to fill a position of need, but you're not, in my opinion, you're not going after the home run kind of guy. You're going after somebody who has that potential stigma attached to him, right?
Well, and I think you see that a lot. You see that a lot with teams and GMs and coaches who get enamored with a player's talent, okay? So they take that risk. And
but so early is my biggest problem there. Is you're going with these risky guys so early in the draft when
but it's
you can find guys like that later on if it's going to be that big of a risk.
And some guys do. I mean, I think
need to risk a first or second rounder on quote-unquote projects.
Well, and I think that you look at some teams' records and what they've done, they've been able to do that. They've been able to get guys that have somehow slipped or had potential that no one saw, and they put a flyer on them, and it works out. Now, the Raiders have gotten burned more. And I think part of the reason, and jump in if you think I'm wrong, part of the reason that Raider fans have the mentality like what you're talking about is because – with all due respect to Al Davis and the incredible maverick and influential person that he was, changed the game. Later on in life, towards the end there, they missed on a lot of picks. The salary cap kind of was a problem for them.
The game passed Al Davis by, unfortunately. You couldn't just win with freak athletes anymore.
Yeah.
You had to have good football players.
Right.
And he missed on that. When you go to 17, we talked about Obi in the second round. Garyon Connolly, now, I have no problem with that pick. I don't think anybody really did because he actually slipped in the draft because of the rape allegations that were levied against him, and you know that went away. Obviously, he was not even ended up being charged, but that I thought was a good pick. But then you go to Obi in round 2, again a project guy, and then you go to Eddie Vanderdoes, again another guy coming off of injury, weight issues in college. You got to question his motor.
He can't stay on the field.
Exactly. What I mean. Okay, if he lives up to potential, great. But again, it's another questionable guy, right? And then you go into this year. Here's where I think things shift. Now you have John Gruden in there. You saw the Colton Miller pick look like, okay, this is seems like it's a wasted pick for a first rounder. He's going to be a project. He might not even play left tackle for the first couple of years. Obviously, they knew more about the Penn situation than we did.
Yeah.
I think they planned on moving Penn to the right side the entire time. And Colton Miller is going to be the starting left tackle, which is what you want out of a first-round pick. You want him to come in and make an impact right away. That's what you're going to get out of Colton Miller. And I think this draft, they did a phenomenal job, and I have to wonder how much of that is the John Gruden offense. Is John Gruden influence, is John Gruden being there now working along with Reggie McKenzie a better dynamic? Is that going to help McKenzie find better
Matt, you've seen
talent overall?
There's influential media members out there who continue to say that it's not going to work long term because no matter what they say, they call Reggie now like a shadow, or excuse me, they call Gruden the shadow GM, right? That Gruden's making more sense. I don't know that that's true. I don't think it is.
I disagree with that.
I think there's a symbiotic relationship. They work together, and he's influencing. But any leader, I don't care if you're a CEO of a company, what you do, if you're a leader, you listen to your people, and he hasn't had that kind of person with Gruden's background there. So now he's got somebody there who can contribute to the personnel discussion.
Exactly. That was going to be my point. Gruden is so connected to personnel in the NFL and in the drafting process and all that. He is so football oriented 1,000% of the time that McKenzie now has a guy that he can go to who knows more than he does about the personnel. Now, Reggie, super smart guy, took over a team that was in draft cap hell in 2012.
Worked hard.
And had to clean everything. He had to spend the first few years just cleaning things up. But look at the guys he brought in, like Charles Woodson, like Justin Tuck, leaders that could come in and fill holes when he needed them to while he built up through the draft. But now you have a guy that can, I think, influence the decision-making in the positive, because you saw, I think, from this draft, you saw them go after more football-oriented, talent-specific guys. The one question mark I had, the biggest one, was Nick Nelson, because, again, another injury. It looks, now, I've had meniscus tears. I currently have one. Not as big a deal as a lot of other things. Pretty easy to come back from. But it was still that red flag, like, oh, my gosh, another injury guy.
He was fourth round after you already selected 4 guys in the first 3 rounds.
Right. Not quite as risky because
you had a lot of picks.
Let him slip a little bit.
Now, I agree with that. And I also think that you have to look at the complex system, right? So Will, one of our listeners and viewers on YouTube, said this. He said, look, the Gruden system is complex. It takes time to learn. And I think that's why we started off the conversation today talking about Donald Penn and how I thought it was unfair that people were saying, oh, it's going to be a disaster. You have to do it. Same thing with Colton Miller. He's not only a rookie, but he's learning a complex system with zone blocking, all this other stuff. And so it's going to take some time.
And all you have to do when you look at the Penn and Miller situation, ask yourself this question. Who would you put at right tackle over Donald Penn right now? Who is the better option?
Nobody.
And who would you put at left tackle over Colton Miller if not Donald Penn?
Right.
You don't want to put Miller on the right side and sacrifice and stunt his growth on the left side when it's the easier transition is to move Penn over because Penn's not going to be there for much longer. He's got a year or two left, period, before his career is over.
Okay, so David Stepanian is sitting in the back of the class trying to hide from the teacher.
No,
so David, tell me, what do you think about this conversation?
No, man, I wanted to chime in. So thank you guys. That was a really high speed, high volume talk you guys were having. I didn't want to ruin your moment.
Slow it down, David. Slow it down.
So Look, I trust anything that Gruden does, all right? And I feel like when Gruden came in, McKenzie sort of had this expectation or this trust that he's going to have a bigger role in the organization than your average coach in the NFL. And if Gruden wants to move Penn to right tackle, I feel like exactly what Matt said. It's going to be an easier adjustment, and Penn doesn't have much longer in his career. And I think Colton Miller, he can play right tackle. He can play left tackle. It's just the easy. It sort of seems like the obvious thing to do here. So I totally understand what he's doing with this, and I hope it works out. I don't want it to be like a failed science test, or
don't want it to be like Doug Martin.
Or like your fatalistic T-shirt with the skull with palm trees and surfboards.
Santa Cruz. This is Santa Cruz. All the Bay Area listeners know about Santa Cruz, all right?
Yes, they do. That's
one of my favorite beaches in the world. By the way.
It's a beautiful
shout out
beach.
to Santa Cruz.
Are there a lot of great whites up there?
There are.
There's a lot of whale watching going on.
There's a lot of sharks up there.
Santa Cruz, the banana slugs, right?
All right, Matt Gutierrez, thank you for the Audible segment. Awesome. We're going to step aside, pay some more bills, and when we come back, we'll close out the show with discussion of what we want to see in the next and final preseason game for the Raiders. You're listening to Silver and Black today on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m.
Hey, this is Tim Brown, Hall of Famer. You're listening to Silver and Black today.
Tim Brown, go Irish! Your 2018-19 national champion.
That was my guy, dude. That was my favorite player growing
Notre
up.
Dame gear today, I noticed.
I don't have Notre Dame. I have my Nevada hat, right, which is the state of Nevada. The star.
For those of you out there, it is Nevada, not Nevada.
Yeah, don't
if
say
anybody's
Nevada.
out of market.
And then
please don't say Nevada ever.
When they hired Gruden,
drives me nuts, man.
That's the biggest pet peeve of mine.
If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, when they hired Gruden, we did a limited edition T-shirt. It said Chucky's back on. I'm trying to show it to the folks there. Anyway, I got that underneath. So
he's got what are you doing with a jacket? It's 1,000 degrees outside. You got a jacket on.
I got a cold, man. I'm not feeling great. I'm not feeling great today, brother.
You should have done the show from outside.
I just want to know how to cut my own hair.
Is Notre Dame beating Michigan week 1? What do you think?
Notre Dame's
going to win the national championship every year.
I know we don't. No, I know we don't.
It sucks that one of those teams are immediately going to be out of the running.
Oh my god!
After week 1.
I'm trying. Hey, I'll tell you what. Notre Dame is going to throttle Michigan.
Oh, my.
And if you look at their schedule the rest of the way, it's very favorable.
Here we go.
Will they beat Alabama? Will they beat Alabama or Clemson? No.
Every year, Notre Dame is going to win the national championship.
No, hell no.
Thank God we don't have to listen to Lou Holtz talk about it anymore.
Oh, my gosh. And you know what's great?
This is Notre Dame football. They're going to win it all this year.
Don't cap on
Come on.
Coach
it's
Lou?
The same thing every year, man.
I love Coach
It's
Lou.
like the Cowboys fans. They're always going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's the Cowboys. Come on.
Jera.
All the great Raiders who went to Notre Dame.
Jera.
Oh, my gosh. So
how did we get on this? Tim Brown. Yeah, one of my favorite Raiders.
At least we're not talking about toilets and other stuff that we hear on some other shows.
Oh,
but it's hopefully we're not this year with the Raiders. But you're listening to Silver and Black today. We're getting a little loopy here in the studio. Hope you're enjoying it, watching on Facebook, YouTube, or listening on the radio.com app. We got a listener. I'm going to give a shout out just because all the way from Alabama, Joe Riley. Joe is listening to us. He's part of Raider Nation.
Roll Tide.
It's hard for him to get stuff down there. And by the way, I have some good friends in Bayou La Batre down on the coast.
Wow.
Yes.
I like that.
Anyway, but Joe, thank you for listening. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Man, we get so many comments today on Matt's hair. See, he doesn't wear a hat. And we finally get all these comments, and we are going to do a video.
Who was it that wanted to bet me a mohawk on opening day? Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Somebody wanted to bet me the Rams-Raiders game. If the Raiders won, I had because I have the Rams, unfortunately, embarrassing the Raiders in Week 1.
Rams -3.
And I'm gonna stand by that. Wanted to bet me. I'm not doing a mohawk, brother. That's just not happening, man.
No, not when you're
able to happen.
Although you could cut it yourself.
I could cut it myself. Right. I could.
And I promise the listeners and viewers out there, we will get a video of Matt cutting his own hair at some point.
I don't know that you should be making that
need a tutorial
promise.
Because we could turn it. We could
going to happen.
Silver and black today with McIntyre's signature hair care product. We're getting there, man. We're getting there.
Man, I got my own product line coming out.
That's
now?
right. We're going to brand the clippers.
Hey, I do that. I like
clippers,
that. Good idea.
Some gel or whatever. I don't know if you use gel or use pomade. You a pomade or gel guy?
I have like 4 different products in my medicine cabinet,
God.
Dude. It depends on
on the day and the weather.
How long does it take? How long does it take to cut your own hair? Just wondering.
Honestly, dude, it's like a 20-25 minute process.
Oh man,
on average, not too long. Not too long.
Well, you haven't been to a barber. I feel like 20-25 minutes.
Maybe Mark Davis will let you cut his hair.
Oh, I don't want that.
No?
I don't want
that.
He
does a fine job on his own.
I don't want that. Love you, Mark, but I don't want that.
If I cut my own hair, have you ever seen that dog that always wins the ugliest dog competition with the hair? It's all over the place. That's what mine look like.
I know what you're talking
about. But all right, so we're going to look ahead now.
Off the rails, man.
Yes, we got off the rails on hair products and hair. But let's talk about Seahawks Raiders. Of course, it's going to be a dud of a game, folks. Nobody's going to be playing except for the guys fighting for a roster spot. So I want to bring everybody in here and tell me a couple of the things, and we'll start with the young buck on the end of the table here, David Stepanian. David, what do you want to see from the Raiders and some of the guys trying to make the cut in this final game against the Seahawks?
I want to see something we haven't seen all preseason long, an explosive offense. I just want the offense to erupt. I want E.J. Manuel to have a great game. I want Connor Cook to have a great game. I want Chris Warren to run for over 100 yards. I want him to score a touchdown or two. That's what I'd like to see. Now, what I think we're actually going to see is exactly as you called it, a dud. And this has been perhaps one of the most or one of the least exciting preseasons I remember seeing in my young life. This has just I haven't had fun watching a lot of these games, and I went to a game in person at the Coliseum, and the 8 fights I witnessed,
True story. I'm in San Diego, and I'm at a Raider-Charger game. And at the end, there's Raider fans. There's always fights there. They had to put in metal detectors because somebody got stabbed the year before. And I'm at the kind of middle of the section. I'm sitting in the upper level, and this guy comes up, and he stands. He's got a Raider jersey on. He's got a Raider helmet in his hand, like one of the plastic toy helmets that we always used to wear. He's got it in his hand, and he stands in the front of our section. Okay, just stands and looks up, and I'm like, what is this guy doing? And he's got the teardrop, from being in jail, the whole thing. He's tough too.
That's a big one.
And he starts taking the helmet and just bashing it against his head and then flipping us all off like this.
Lovely.
And it was, I didn't get that on camera, did I? No, good. Okay, so, but anyway, you talk about fights. Talking about fights. Anyway, so that was a quick story. Matt, thank you, David. I appreciate it, man.
Of course.
What do you want to see in this game with the Raiders as they get, as some of these guys fight for their lives?
Exactly. I think you're going to, especially where you have so much depth, where you have so much cornerback depth suddenly. Are we really saying that? This team has cornerback depth, which I think they do. Linebacker depth, defensive line depth. I think you're going to see guys go all out, really. You're going to see maybe the best performance from these guys that you've seen all preseason because, like I mentioned before, close to 40 guys from every single roster are about to have their dreams crushed. They're going to lose their job. They're going to be cut from their team. And, you have to fight for that last spot. I don't care if you're number 1 on the roster, number 53 on the roster. If you're there, you're on an NFL roster. And I'm looking forward to watching those guys that are fighting for those last couple of spots defensively more than anything. I think offensively, and we talked about the lack of depth there. Offensive line is pretty much set, and you're going to fill in holes. Receiver down towards the bottom, couple spots that need to fill in. Running back, I think, is set because of the Washington injury. But defensively, man, you're going to lose a lot of guys that you don't want to see go.
That's true. For me, it's all about Doug Martin. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I think there's some truth.
I think
there's a little bit of truth to that statement.
I really believe, and I'd like to see Doug Martin do something that makes you eat your words. But
please
I don't know that
Come on, Doug.
I don't think anything in preseason.
But I don't think he's going to play at all. So so that's fine. But
he might not even dress for the game.
I want to see that, and I want to see one of those quarterbacks step up, just so going into the season, you know you have an insurance policy.
I would not feel comfortable regardless.
Yeah, I want to see Morrow and Markel Lee continue to play how they have. So that's going to be it. Well,
is Cowser going to crack the 53?
I don't think so. As well as he's played, he could though. You don't know. I think a lot.
But that's the thing. You're going to see guys like that.
A lot of tough decisions.
Go all out, man.
All right, Matt, David, thank you, man, both for being here. That's going to wrap it up. Make sure you stay connected to us. silverandblacktoday.com as well. Also, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss anything with the email there as well. For my co-host, Matt Gutierrez, correspondent David Stepanian.
Got a little hectic there towards the end, man. It kind of went off the rails today.
It did, but that's
I'll put my hat back on next week. I've had enough of this nonsense.
We'll keep it moving.
Jeez. What the heck is going on?
And for our engineer, Colin Pulicello, who we didn't get on camera today, we have to, and because he's got that huge thing on
you can only see his chest on camera.
Some big mole growing there or something. As we sign off, we never say goodbye, Raider Nation. Thanks for listening, and until next week, may the autumn wind always be at your back.
Love it.
All right, you've been listening to Silver and Black Today. We'll see you next week, guys. On to the regular season.